Hello, welcome to Math for All, where we try to make math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. I'm Molly Vokey.
And I'm Heidi Subnani. Welcome to season 4. We're really excited to have you here, and we hope that you will follow along. You can always find our latest streams and information about guests and resources on social media at Math for All Show, or on our YouTube channel or on our website. So if you are following along in any of those spaces, we will have some follow-up information that you can find there, and also information from workshops that Molly and I are running. So we hope that you will visit that space.
Yes. And our show today is brought to you by Math Activators, our book that is published by Didex. So we are so excited to start season 4. I first of all can't even believe that we're in season 4. It's flown by, and we've had this amazing opportunity to talk to so many different people, and today is going to be no less exciting. Is this right? Okay, nope, wrong question, so don't even look at that. We are a little rusty after the summer, everyone. We're going to be talking to Chris Hogbin today, and he is going to be talking about math anxiety. So we're super excited to have him. So let's welcome. Oh, wait, no, I have to read his bio. Oh my gosh, I am very rusty today.
Yeah. Welcome to the beginning of season 4, everyone.
Yeah.
If you didn't remember, we're a live show. So we just go.
We're a live show. We are. Oh, all right, here we go. Chris is an Aussie educator with over 15 years of experience teaching mathematics in Australia and the UK. His passion lies in transforming math education to make it not only understandable, but enjoyable for students. Over the past 6 years, he's dedicated himself to researching mathematics anxiety and finding ways to reduce its impact on students' learning experiences. As a frequent speaker at conferences and a teacher trainer in this space, he strives to empower educators with effective strategies to address math anxiety in the classroom. Alongside his teaching and research endeavors, he's ventured into ed tech, culminating in the creation of Number Hive, an innovative app designed to revolutionize how students engage with math. Beyond the realm, yeah, it is. It's super fun. And also, I don't know if you knew this, but there's a paper version. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome. Beyond the realm of numbers, he's navigating the wild ride of parenthood with his wife and 2 boys aged 13 and 10. His mission? To ease the grip of math anxiety and make learning a joy for students everywhere. So that would be great if he can just come to all my schools. All right, let's welcome him in. Hello, Chris.
Hello. It's good morning here. So we're living in the future.
Right.
Friday morning. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. And I will do my best to use math instead of maths because we're
it's okay.
A little bit different here. We'll see how we go.
Well, we'll take math any way it comes. So, well, not anyway, but
most ways.
Most ways. I mean, we have to take it, right?
We can ask it this way too. What is your math story? We like to start here because if people aren't familiar with you or your work, it allows them to get to know a little bit about you and how you ended up where you are now.
Yeah, great. I'd love to share. Please do interrupt and ask any questions. As a teacher, that's what we're used to, isn't it? So if you want some clarification, or if I'm waffling, because I'm just going to turn back the clock and see where we end up. So I never loved maths as a kid, but I was quite good at it. Well, I thought I was good at it. I got decent grades, but I always saw maths as a bit of a means to an end. So I thought, you know what, good career, you need maths to actually get there. And so I thought, get good grades. And so I actually put most of my brain power into actually figuring out how to get good grades rather than actually understanding the maths. And so I did that all the way until the end of high school, where you could actually figure out what the questions were going to be, learn how to do the right answers, and do well in maths. That way you could go and get a good career. And so that's how I saw maths, lots of sort of rote memorization, especially with sort of when it was longer questions, just sort of mimicking what the teacher will do, figure out what the exams were going to ask, and you'd be fine. And so that's what maths was for me until I got to uni. And so I was studying engineering, and I'm not sure why I did it one day, but I thought I'm going to go into it was a textbook. I was studying calculus, and I'm going to figure out calculus from its first principles. And it sounds like a really nerdy. This is not a
That
normal thing
sounds
that I
really
would
fun.
do. Yeah. Well, anyway, I
Yeah.
did it, and I thought I think there was just a sort of dynamic geometry software is coming to life, and so I actually saw how calculus worked, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is magic. This is fantastic. Like, why didn't I learn it this way to start with? And so I always knew how to do differentiation and integration. I knew how to do it, but I didn't know what was actually happening behind the scenes, and I couldn't actually see it. And so I thought, and the more I actually started digging into I suppose the real maths behind these processes that I'd learned, I saw this is all magic. It's practical, but also when you actually understand the maths, it sinks in, it's retained. And if you can't remember a formula, you can actually build it from the ground up. And so I thought, you know what? Why didn't I learn maths that way? So anyway, I moved out of engineering into teaching. Did a maths major.
Career move.
Yeah, well, some days I don't know, but anyway, it happened. And so, yeah, what I wanted to do was go back and teach students in the way that I didn't get taught, and so I wanted to show them the magic, show them how it was real. You could actually build it yourself, and so, and that wasn't easy because I had a lot of I suppose leaders and mentors, and they did a lot of things really well, but a lot of the time they were saying to me, no. It's sort of more of a direct instruction. You show them how to do it, get them to do 1,000, and then you move on. That's how you get success. And I didn't see it. It didn't work. That's not how it worked for me. And so I gradually saw that, you know what I actually stumbled upon was working. We saw some great results, and not just on paper, but kids were enjoying the maths. They were turning up early to class, and we sort of transformed the culture over many years. And then I started hearing that that there was lots of research out there supporting the way I did things, which was just really encouraging. And I actually read a quote. I stumbled upon it yesterday, so I thought, I'm going to say this. This actually sums up, I think, my philosophy to teaching, especially in those early days. It's out of a book called A Mathematician's Lament, which is a very interesting read. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And so what I wanted to do is that question that my students would ask me, why do we need to know this? When are we going to use this? And I thought that's actually a legitimate question. And so I suppose my mission sort of became to never have my students ask that question. I wanted it to be sort of intrinsic to why we were doing things. And so if I ever had that question asked, I actually saw it as a failure on my own teaching. I thought, well, if I haven't actually created the need, then I've failed to start with. Whereas I'd been in so many other classes, and the kids would ask that question, the teachers would say, well, it's going to be on your test at the end of the unit. I think that's just not enough, especially for students.
It's a very compelling reason.
Yeah,
Right.
and and I just thought that it's just so not the way we should be doing things. Anyway, so that's a little bit of why I suppose where my philosophy started, but what I saw was I saw students coming into math, and so I was in a middle school setting, and so they'd come through primary or elementary school, and they'd come to me, and they had all these attitudes which were really limiting their moving forward. So I'm not a math person. I'm more a creative person, or this is irrelevant. It's just about rote learning. A lot of these attitudes that I'd seen previously, and I just saw that they were limiting these students moving forward. They were sort of capping their potential, and I just thought to myself, these kids are saying no to math, but they haven't even met the real math. And I thought, how many kids are we actually missing out on moving through the math space, the STEM space, and how much are they missing out on? Because this thing can be magic if taught in that way. And so I spent a lot of my time, I suppose, correcting these attitudes in my own class. And once you sort of correct those attitudes and you build in more of a growth mindset, and you foster that risk-taking classroom and change the culture of the classroom, actually learning and understanding and finding joy in the math, it was just completely changed, and the students were it just completely altered their trajectory. And so I saw success there, and I think fast forward a little while, and I ended up in ed tech in a maths company, doing their education stuff. And it was, whilst it meant I was out of the classroom a bit more, what it meant is that I had time to actually do some of that research that I wanted to do. So I got to look into math anxiety and these attitudes that were inhibiting students. And I found, you know what, these attitudes aren't limited to my classroom in little old Australia. They're actually global. And so I suppose that's where that passion started. Well, maybe I can actually take some of those solutions and scale them, and help teachers across the world. And so that's what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it feels like a drip in the ocean, but it is lovely to see, even just for those students, where the light bulbs come on and they say, you know what, this is not what I thought math was. And even just hearing some of your previous hosts, like I've learned a lot from Pam Harris, and just her on that journey of, you know what, math is figure outable. And so that's what I want to show students. So on a very similar journey, just I suppose slightly different angles or spaces that we're working in.
I mean, you kind of started talking about our question today, but I feel like it's probably even deeper, right? Then why is it important for us to lower math anxiety?
Yeah, well, I think it's and I'd love to hear from Heidi as well, because I know she's done a lot of. I like to flip things around if I can. I think, and please build on this, Heidi. I think it's really, like I sort of said, it's so important, because math anxiety actually has the potential to actually cripple a student's growth. It has the potential to stop them from progressing. And a few of the things we know about math anxiety is that it doesn't actually diminish with age. So unless we lower it or address it or give students that corrective experience, that will sit with them. And that's why we see so many of the adults around us that have math anxiety themselves. And that might mean that they've got a fear of math. That might mean that they've completely sort of avoided any math in their career. It might mean that, you guys have probably experienced this, when you talk to someone, you introduce yourself and you say you're into math, and they sort of slowly back away and try and get out of that conversation.
They're like, oh,
yeah, it's I think it's really important, and there's lots of other things we can say, like we know now that success in math is almost become this almost universal guide for success, or determiner for success elsewhere. So successful kids in maths, it almost has this wider impact of success elsewhere, success in university as well. And so you've got countless STEM subjects that they need it for. So actually just lowering that math anxiety is just super important. I feel like I haven't done a great job there. Would you like to come in and fill those gaps for me?
Can I feel like something you said kind of triggered something for me, and I have not done a whole lot of research on math anxiety as the both of you have, but my practical experience, I was also a middle school teacher. And so, as you both know, by the time students get to middle school, they're very programmed as to whether or not they are or not a math person. And that often starts at home. And I think there's generational trauma over math that can be translated from parent to student. Just saying that I'm not a math person to your kid gives your kid permission to also not be a math person, and or to assume that they too are not a math person. So I feel that it's critically important for us to interrupt that chain of events that could be happening at home that we have no control over in school.
Yeah, absolutely. It's right on point what you've said there. It's one of the big causes. So when I talk to teachers, one of the big three in terms of causes is actually, like say, adult opinions. How do kids form their perception of themselves? A lot of the time it's through influential adults, and who is more influential than the parents and the teachers. And so the amount of sort of parent-teacher interviews I've sat in, they say, oh, little Jimmy's not going to be very good because I wasn't good at maths. Oh, it's okay, buddy, you're just not a maths person. And whilst well-intentioned, these can be some of the most harmful things for a student. And we also know a student's sort of perception of their own ability at something, their self-efficacy, that is as important as their innate ability, if we can call it that. So those environmental factors. And so if you can change those attitudes around and build in more of a growth mindset, it's actually amazing. And I suppose the more disappointing thing is that we actually start telling these students from such an early age. And sadly, so much of the time, it's actually speed equals smartness in math. And so if you're fast at maths, you're going to be a good mathematician all the way through. And conversely, if you're not, that's going to be the opposite journey. And so, yeah, adult opinions. And it's not just on a student's ability, but it's also opinions on math itself. So if they're seeing math as, math's irrelevant or math's boring or even just that sort of subtle but pervasive, maths is just something to be endured. Those attitudes, they really get sort of passed on to the students, even if it's just sort of subliminally. But they're so powerful. So yeah, I think, what did you say? We need to interrupt that cycle. I think that's a fantastic way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, if you consider, for hundreds of years, if that not thousands, like the idea of being an educated person was often around the idea of being literate and the ability to read and write. And math was kind of put off into this side bubble, right? Like, so you might be able to do that. You might be able to add with tally marks as a farmer, or you have an idea of like in, surf or medieval times, like we would be doing mathematics innately as part of your work and your
purposes,
job. So you had that as a craft person or as a carpenter or any of those things. Like that was like the practical thing. But to be educated, you had to be literate. And so we've kind of like carried that through 1,000 years later to like, that's the pinnacle of things. And even though, in the last 70 years, let's say, like, it's not enough to just be able to compute math anymore and really be a functioning member of society. It's like, that's the least. We have computers that do those kinds of things. It's understanding the mathematics behind the computations and behind the graphs and behind the things that you see in social media or TV, or that you read in newspapers, or that you're looking at. If you don't have an understanding of the why and how, someone can still, like, that is holding you back from being a really productive member of society. And so I think people miss that. Oh, well, I have a calculator now, so I don't have to be good at that. Well, no, but you will stop your ability to progress and to like find new fields. It's really about the problem solving of mathematics and less about the computation. But the computation is what often is pushed in younger grades. And so then we get stuck in that. And that was me for many years, like as a child. So we get stuck in like, oh, you're not going to be able to go beyond this because learning this set of facts is challenging for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think it's you're so right. It's about problem solving. It's not about this sort of arbitrary skills which we so often make maths about, sadly. But yeah, how do they actually solve problems and use the tools? But also there's a real beauty and joy that can be found in maths, which we don't often associate it with. And I actually heard an explanation yesterday. It's quite profound. I need to spend some more time thinking on it, so don't quote me on it just yet. But someone was saying, why is it so different with literacy and maths? And this person was saying, well, with English, we start with the text, and then we build the curriculum around the text. Whereas with maths, we start with the curriculum, and then we build a text around the curriculum. So at least in English, you have these sort of works of real English, of beauty, of creativity, of magic, and then we study those. Where in maths, we actually start with a curriculum, and then we build textbooks around the curriculum. So it stays as this sort of set of arbitrary facts. There's no connections, there's no history, there's no magic and joy and creativity in there. And so, yeah, I think it's a real problem.
It's making me think about it. I don't know if you know Sunil Singh, but everyone probably knows Sunil, but I feel like he has this big push on, including history and mathematics and whatever. And teachers, and rightly so, the number of topics that you have to teach are numerous. And I feel like I would love to be able to teach math, history. I don't know any of it. I would have to learn it, to be honest, because I didn't learn it as a student and I didn't learn it in college. I would have to learn a lot, but I would love to be able to teach like that. It's not in our standards. It's not, we can do it for sure. You would have to figure out how to do it, but it definitely is not something that comes naturally by any force, because it's not in our standards. We weren't taught to do it. So, but I think that would be much prettier and much more enjoyable for kids to understand where things came from versus just how we do them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly right. We're showing kids just how to do things. And so it's this, it becomes an isolated set of sort of how-tos. And if we're just focusing on how-to and we're measuring how-to, then it lends itself to sort of standardized tests on just how to do things. Whereas, and it just makes it so, for me, it just becomes this set of random facts that I don't know how they fit together. Whereas maths should be this sort of this beautiful web of connections and ideas that all work together. And I think, like you said, the curricula globally are just so full. So how are teachers supposed to say, I'm going to take time out when I can't even feel that I'm going to go and spend a lesson on history? I actually think it should be more holistically. So if you're teaching Pythagoras' theorem rather than just teaching it in isolation, here's the formula, this is how you apply it. Let's actually go and have a look at the person of Pythagoras, how he arrived at this random thing. There was actually rocks involved. So it's quite bizarre. But even just acknowledging that a lot of these theorems sort of were constructed over hundreds of years, and we're going to say we're going to give it 30 seconds in class to how to apply it.
But that's such a thing that kids should know, right? That we're expecting them to learn this thing that took hundreds of years, but now here you go, we've got 1 year to get this done. And it's contrary to the actual way in which mathematics actually does work or has worked in the world.
And the way real mathematicians still work today, which is where they play, they tinker, they're creative, they have to problem solve. Like Heidi was saying, we have calculators and devices that can do the computation very quickly, but they don't think. They don't have number sense to realize that I've missed a decimal point and suddenly I'm paying $500 for a hamburger instead of $5 for a hamburger. It's you're 100% right.
When we think about, like there's the push to problem-based learning, or at least in the US, there's this idea of like, oh, this is a problem-based curriculum. But the idea is that we've just added more language to the mathematics versus like we've put it in a context of a story. Or so now not only are you going to have to figure out the computation that you're going to need to do as a young child, but you're also going to have to decode words and think of it like versus making their own context and their own language and thinking about the skills that you might need to problem solve. The problem has to be done in a 55 to 60 minute time block. And then, and that's it, or that's the only moment that we have to play or tinker or learn in a way that is more organic, because that's messier. Right? Like it's very challenging to control what that looks like. And I still think that's often the goal of many of our educational structures, is to like, how can we make sure that everyone gets the same thing or the same experience? But we're not all the same.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so reticent to say here's your one size fits all, because you know what, different classrooms call for different things. So remember one class I had with a very disillusioned bunch of middle schoolers, and so they really needed to see how things fit. So instead of teaching ratios, we went down to the ag shed, and I spoke to the head of maintenance, and he sort of talked to us about how ratios are used in petrols and in the motors, in the mowing equipment, and they actually saw it come to life. And so that was what actually helped them switch on. Like, oh right, I need to learn this stuff. I can see how it fits into life. Whereas others, there have been times where direct instruction with rich questioning works better. But it's so the cultural context of these students is so important as a teacher, and that's why we need to adapt and adjust and actually be willing to reflect and say, I got that wrong. I was going to say something. I've lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
You go on. I had something deep and profound, I'm sure of it, but it might come back.
So I would love to talk a little bit about how how Number Hive came about, because I do feel like it's one of my go-tos for when I'm having the conversation, because we still like exist. Like I would love to like throw out all the things and blow it all. Yeah. Okay. Like that's not the reality that we live in. So I still have teachers who are like part of their expectation for the standards of the grade. You know, in the US it's third grade and we're exploring multiplication, and, you know, in first and second grade, we're exploring addition and subtraction within 10 or 20 or whatever it happens to be. And so these are still part of our everyday experience. And so we want to think about like not causing more harm from the ways that many of us experienced the idea or concept of fluency. And so can you talk a little bit about how Number Hive came about, and then we can kind of talk about how that is a good alternative.
Yeah. No,
some of the things that
to.
might cause math anxiety.
Yeah, if we have time to come back to, we should talk about also the thing I was going to talk about previously was how we measure success and what we value in maths determines so much of what we do, and that might come into the conversation. So basically, and I'm not going to talk too much about fluency. I think if we're going to talk about fluency, you need to go back and listen to your conversation with Jennifer Bay Williams, because I think she's fantastic around and fluency. And what I've started actually doing is calling it flexible fluency, even though flexibility sits under fluency. But it just reminds teachers that it's not just rote learned and how quickly they can recite facts. There's so much more to fluency. So basically what I saw, if we rewind back the conversation, I had a whole bunch of students that were coming in with attitudes and those real potential limiters. And along with those attitudes, I also found that, they were low on confidence, but they didn't actually have a foundation. They didn't have the math facts. And so how could we go and start doing factoring? How could we start doing fractions if they didn't have the multiplication, the division facts? They didn't understand those connections. And so one of the tools I actually used in class, I used lots of tools to try and sort of create the need and build that flexible fluency in class. I think one of the best ways of building those skills and that true fluency is through games. I think games is a disarming way, a low stakes way of building those skills. And as Jennifer would say, if you can find games that really force students to choose a strategy and see those connections, they're the best type of games. And so I used to adapt and create a whole bunch of games for these scenarios, and I knew that my students needed to know multiplication and division facts. And so we used to play Number Hive on paper, and it was fantastic. And so we weren't necessarily in the same stage as you of actually forming these relationships and building that fluency the first time around. We were actually backfilling it because these students never had it. And if you've taught middle school, you know that if you start saying to kids, we're going to go back to grade 3 or grade 4, they say, no, we're not doing that. We're not going back there. There's too much shame attached. It really taps into the anxiety or maybe even some trauma that they've had previously. And often these students have been taught by well-meaning teachers who have taught that to get that fluency, it's just drill and kill, time tests, shame-based charts. And so a lot of students, even a lot of adults, can actually trace their fear or anxiety back to multiplication testing. And so in fact, the real catalyst for me to try and blow this thing up was he's now 13. It was a few years back. He came home And he just started bawling his eyes out. He was crying in tears, and he said, I said, "What's the matter, buddy?" And he said, "Dad, I suck at maths." And he has a little bit of pressure attached to him because he knows I'm a maths guy in his mind. And he said, "I suck at my times tables. I suck at my multiplication facts." And I said, "Why do you say that, buddy?" And he said, "Because I'm not fast at them, and I stress out when my teacher points to me and puts me under pressure in front of the whole class." And my heart broke, and I just thought, how many of our young people think they suck at math because of this completely normal experience? And so what even frustrated me more is I look at him and I see he's so creative. Some of the ways he actually comes at solutions when we do like number talks and things, I think that is just amazing. I wish I had his brain. He perseveres at problems. He sees the magic in numbers and in patterns. And I think, why don't we value that? Why are we saying that he sucks at maths because he's not fast at things? And so that was actually the real catalyst. Apart from the fact that I was in, I suppose, research and seeing that this problem was everywhere, I had a whole bunch of solutions to different problems, but Number Hive just was a great fit for this multiplication facts issue, especially because I saw how it retrofitted those skills and that fluency in for my students. I thought, I can scale this and I can help students have a backfill that fluency, but in a way that they enjoy. They're thinking sort of critically. They're also seeing that connection between multiplication and division. And I thought, what it can also do is it can be an alternative for the teachers when they're building it in that first time. They don't have to go to drill and kill. There's a more enjoyable, a more sort of low stakes way of doing it. And that's what we're seeing is where, like, the feedback I get from teachers is just, this is what I've been looking for, that alternative. And it's still hard because a lot of the teachers are mandated. For example, in the UK, there's something called the MTC. So every grade 4 student in the UK has to go through and be tested on their fluency. And the way they measure fluency is if they can get 25 multiplication fact questions done in a certain amount of time. And so you can imagine where teachers go with that, and they're well-intentioned and well-meaning, but the damage that is done in this process is huge, and we're not actually seeing any better mathematicians for it. So this big push for fluency and all this stuff around cognitive load, and I see the value there. But what we're doing to address it is just not working. And you know what? For some kids, mnemonics, songs, just trying to rote learn, it's just not possible.
Right.
It's so difficult. In fact, when I think about my multiplication facts, even my 2s, 3s, 4s, I still don't have those memorized. I just do a quick double it and add another one, or double it and double it again. And so I do a very quick process on how to get there. Whereas if you've just sort of rote learned 6 7s are 42, well, why isn't it 43 if you forget it? And you know, when our brains actually cannot just rote memorize things, it's when they're under a stressful situation. And so if you forget something and then suddenly the anxiety builds, and we all know that experience. Whereas if you actually understand sort of 6 7s is 42, you also know that 7 6s is 42. You also know that, well, 7 and 6 are both factors. You know that 42 divided by 7 is now 6. You know that, well, if 2 and 3 are factors of 6 when they're also factors of 4, there is so much more there that you need to be a successful mathematician later on. And we're really limiting them by only saying that rote learned linear fact is all you need to know. But it also makes it really unenjoyable. So anyway, what I saw in the classroom was this game just worked so well. I adapted it to, as they got older, I just thought, this is such a brilliant way of building math facts, and the kids loved it. Like sometimes you just you're a little bit shocked at how much they get into things. Certain games just really trigger in them this I suppose an intrinsic motivation to drive their own learning forward. And so I just kept adapting it as we got through different content. So I thought, I need to change this to distributive principle. So I did that. I need to change this to sort of algebra. So I did that, and I just kept adapting the game. And that's like, we still have those. A lot of teachers use those today. It's a great sort of, it's good because kids are moving and they're communicating. And I think it's even, I think, who was it? Jennifer was saying the other day, just having students voicing things out loud, having that peer support. I love when 2 students play with 2 more students. You start to see that collaboration, you see the communication. And there's so much rich thinking that takes place, and this thinking that teachers sort of dream of imparting into their students is just happening so organically. I think that's why, well, that's what I saw in the classroom, and that's why it has sort of exploded in growth, and teachers are seeing what a wonderful alternative to what I have been doing, or at least a complement.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the idea that you can strategize and think like beyond what's right, like the initial thing you think. So when I've introduced it to teachers, I usually play them without any direction. We're just like, okay, we're going to do this, you guys against me, like all of you together. And it's that idea of like figuring out the strategy behind it and the multiple pathways that you have, and like some strategy behind it. And can you work collaboratively to think about that, which that idea of multiple pathways, multiple solution paths is so helpful for students, because they can be pushed, and you can push them into like thinking about something. So if I'm playing with another student and I know, okay, like I want them to work on their 6 facts, like how can I maneuver them on the board so that they're practicing that in a more organic way than just like, okay, you come over here and we're going to work together to, like, why?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what, we've obviously the digital's a lot more difficult to bring in new things, and a lot more expensive. But the paper-based, the printable game boards, we've actually got some versions where it just focuses on certain fact groups, which is really helpful. So yeah, and I love that some of these students that are so low on confidence that they just can't bear the thought of the shame involved in taking a risk and getting it wrong. And we say, come and have a play. And you know what? You can play against a bot. It's a non-human.
Yeah.
There's very low intimidation. And so they get into it, and they start warming up. And it's so simple to get started, but there's so many deep levels of nuance as you play when you start blocking and you start not leaving those factors. And so, that's what I'd love to say that all the levels of nuance were intentional, but maybe they weren't.
They absolutely were.
yeah, it was designed from the start.
But I think like there are opportunities to, some of the things I've seen it done with teachers. So one of the teachers who I originally introduced it, like it was at the end of the day and I happened to be back in that same building, and he's like, got it from my class. This is what we're doing. And then it was like a debrief and the discussion after of what are some of the solutions or what are some of the pathways that we can use? Like, what is your advice to another student in the class who maybe was? And so it was the conversation after that also is really important. So having that push with teachers, like, okay, yes, this is a piece of, you can either paper or the technology version. This is a tool that we're going to use. But having the conversation after is, when Jennifer talks about that too, like, okay, I'm going to have them play this game, but there's an intention and a reason why I'm having you play this game and why I'm using these sets of numbers or these expressions, because I want to give you opportunity to practice a particular strategy.
But I almost love what you just said, Heidi, about like you could project a game board and just have a conversation about it without even playing the game. So like you could start your class with just almost like a number talk about the game and not even play it that day. Right. Like that's another whole versatile thing that I think is so cool.
I feel like you've just...
And then they want to, right? Like, oh, I'm just going to put it up. We're just going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then, like, oh, but maybe if we get through this, then I'll put it out and you guys can play it together. But it's that piece of like, okay, like, yes, I want to do something with that verse. It's like the same thing, you put out manipulatives. You're not going to do anything with them for 5 minutes because everyone's playing. I don't even care. I bring pattern blocks to work with teachers and I like, don't even try to talk to them for 5 minutes because they're making designs and they're building like, everybody does that. We all know those things are going to happen because we are curious innately about how. So having that opportunity for conversation is so important.
Absolutely. And I love it how you're both theorizing how this could look in the classroom, because the whole time I'm just saying you're absolutely on it, because this is what I do in all my lessons. In fact, I actually find far more value in using the boards as number talks as I do than actually playing them. And so what we'll do is we start with the board and say, where would you start? Why would you start there? Why is a 12 a really great number to start with? And they think about the factor pairs that you can find. And then what I love to do is I love to play a game up on the board. And ultimately what happens is the class ends up going and playing, and I'll play a student because they say, "Oh, sir, can I play against you?" And so I put it up on the board, and then undoubtedly they gather a few troops and they start talking about it because they want to beat me. And then there's some empathy shown, and then I start getting some troops coming with me, and you get like half of the class here, half of the class here, and it's just this magical situation. And as teachers, we see opportunities and we say, why wouldn't I use this here? Well, why would I go for this strategy? And there's so much richness in that conversation. And especially if you have sort of a target area you want to go down, or a targeted strategy, that's what you can use at that point. And so it's just a really great catalyst or scaffold to build that number talk around, and it's so rich as well. So exactly what you guys are saying is what happens in a classroom done well. And so that's why I am convinced, and I keep pushing this, because I see what teachers do with it, and it can be very enriching.
I'll say too, I haven't tried this yet, but I'm like thinking about it, like taking the paper board and cutting it apart, and how could you create the most difficult board with these puzzle pieces? So like haven't done it yet.
There's so many more creative teachers than I. So I love when you put something out there and they come back and say, I have had teachers do that. I've had teachers create timber boards. I often see teachers rather than just playing the game. Well, a lot of them use the maze because it's not it's more collaborative. Some of them try and feel the board, but a lot of them will just put different colors on the different factors, and then have those. So for example, if 7 is a blue counter, they go and put blue on all the 7s. 8's a different color, and then they see that 56 is purple. Why is 56 purple? Because it's a blue and a red. And they say, oh, which one's going to have the highest pile? And so you get all these rich conversations that come out of those activities as well. So the sky's the limit. And I keep looking at it's very humbling. I see teachers that post what they're doing and their ideas. I think that is so much better than what I do. But it's wonderful to see, I suppose, that joint voice of teachers strengthening each other and coming up with so many wonderful ideas.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So exciting. So how can our listeners learn more about you?
Well, I think they're probably better off learning more about the stuff I'm talking about rather than learning about me. But they
all right. How can they learn about your work?
Because I am always learning. I think that's the wonderful thing about being a teacher. If we ever say that we've arrived somewhere, then we need to sort of hop out of a classroom, don't we? So people, like I'm on socials as much as I don't love many aspects of social media. I am on the social. There it is there on Twitter or X. You can email me. A lot of the work that we're doing. So we do have the app which we see is making a difference. And again, it's very humbling to see that it's in about 150 countries now, which just blows my mind, especially in countries that don't even speak English. And they've figured out how the game works. And so I just look at it and I'm like, oh my goodness, I used to dream of sort of having a few users being impacted. But yeah, so you can go and play for free. It's got we've got addition and multiplication for free. We're trying to make it sustainable by having a premium offering for teachers, which offers a lot more. But we do have, I suppose, the big goal is to bring equity and for students everywhere. And so there is a lot there.
Completely reasonable amount considering what teachers usually do out of pocket for things. This is one of the things that will make a difference long term.
Yeah, exactly. I hope so. And so there's a lot of information. You can get to the game at numberhive.app. And so we've got a lot of research, a lot of articles just around math anxiety. What we want to do is we want to try and help, as we talked about earlier, a lot of the damage is done even in the home and from those subtle attitudes and because of the experience that parents have had. And so what we want to do is we want to help teachers to help parents. And one thing is educating them. And so we've got some resources on how to do that. But we've also found that even just getting the parents playing the game is having the parents be involved in a really helpful way. Because quite often, I just want to make sure I'm careful with how I say this. teachers don't want the parents getting involved because it can be more damaging than good when they come and they force the old methods on them, and then they start sort of using sort of shame language, and it can be really detrimental. Whereas we found that, hey, get them to do this, and it's actually really productive. It changes the culture, and it actually sort of breeds new conversations, and it helps new attitudes in the home. Anyway, we've got a lot of those resources around sort of engagement in the classroom, and a lot of educational sort of commentary just in general on the website. So you can find out a lot about us there. I'm always wanting to talk to people, whether it's just a Zoom call or email. I love to learn from people. There's so many wonderful people doing great things in this space. So yeah, that's how you can learn more about us, what we're doing, and hopefully learn something in the space too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning for you and tonight for us. This has been a great start to our 4th season. It's making me want to go play the game right now. I'm not sure that my 17-year-old will be totally into it right now, but
well, you'd be surprised. They reckon it's the only app that teachers will play in their classroom and then go and play in the staff room as well. So that's pretty cool.
All right, so I might be wrong. He might be ready for it.
Let me know.
Well, we appreciate having you here. Thanks for spending some time with us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for chatting. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
All right. That was fun.
Yes, everyone needs to go play.
Like, yes, agreed. Agreed.
I love it. It is like required playing.
Yeah, no,
for all my third grade teachers.
You've been singing the praises of Number Hive long before you even knew who he was. So that's actually speaks volumes, because you and he have a lot in common with your research. So that's really cool. Well, our next episode is going to be on October 3rd with Brendan Scribner, who is a friend of ours, and we're really excited to talk to him. Don't forget to take a look at Math Activators at Didex.
And until then, we hope that you keep math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. Have a good night.
Yes. Thanks.